life is not linear, and it's all of these micro decisions that lead to where we are today and give us the skills and the confidence to know that we're in the seat that we're supposed to be in.
We recognize genius wherever it exists. And if you're known by the company you keep, we are proud to not only spotlight the women that are part of Rockefeller Capital Management's unique network, but also welcome our brilliant audience members.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Esposito, head of Rockefeller's Enterprise Client Coverage Group, and welcome back to Genius Loves Company. Everyone has a story to tell, and we're excited to hear those from some of Rockefeller's top private advisors, investors, and senior leaders about the life and career experiences that got them here and the insights and perspective they've gained along the way. With me today is Alex Petrone, Managing Director and Director of Fixed Income at Rockefeller Asset Management. Alex is responsible for leading Rockefeller Asset Management's fixed income business, setting strategy, driving investment performance, and most importantly, working closely with our current and prospective clients. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Laura. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited about this conversation. You graduated from Harvard with a degree in economics. You've become one of the most respected portfolio managers in a hyper-specialized world of municipal and fixed income markets. Of course, we want to know how you've done it, but let's take a step back first. So tell us a little bit about how you got here, family, growing up, education. I want to dig in on Harvard. That blows my mind. Path to New York and Wall Street.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. That's lots to unpack in, just 20 years. From a family perspective, I grew up in a household of four. My parents, as well as my older brother, they were tremendous supporters of my brother and I. I had an older brother, so I was always trying to emulate and really achieve what I thought he was doing that was so amazing. And I had parents who, throughout our lifetime, whether it was 4 years old and figuring out what we were interested in, or 12 and trying to navigate some of the complexities of those fun middle school years, or navigating to boarding school, or navigating to Harvard, and big career decisions along the way, our parents were always incredibly supportive of us. Take the risks, learn to fail. We're here to support you. And not just my parents, but the much bigger picture family that was involved in our day-to-day. We would go to my grandparents every weekend, and they were tremendous supporters of me as well as my brother, and our aunts and uncles and cousins and cheerleaders in our corner throughout our life, including today, just really supporting the path forward, which was tremendous for then taking on some of the things that I've continued to move towards later in life. So, if I unpack that, I think of key words I would use to describe myself as a young athlete. First and foremost, I started playing sports at a really young age. It taught me a tremendous amount about teamwork, collaboration, discipline, accepting defeat. That's critically important, and really forging a new path when there's defeat, or pivoting when you're down 1-0 and the game only has, 5 minutes left. So I think the skill set from being an athlete, tremendously valuable in investing today. That element of being studious, markets are always changing, so critically important, and just really giving us some of that space to try new things, achieve, fail, and support us was critical for all of what we're doing today.
Yeah.
I would add, I had moments in my childhood. I was the first female president of my boarding school. What I also learned was the power of leading through vision, execution, taking responsibility when things don't go the way you would expect. I mean, even at this boarding school, there were things that, as a student council member, that maybe didn't go the way that the school expected. You had to step up, lead, accept responsibility. I think all really critical skills that didn't set me on a path towards finance by any means, but helped me acquire the necessary skills to be successful in the world of finance.
There's so many different paths we can go down, whether it's boarding school and where that emerged from, but maybe just quickly, sports. What sports?
Oh, yes, everything. Everything and anything. So not only did I grow up with an older brother who I just wanted to hang out with, I still do, he's fantastic, but neighbors who were just always playing football, kickball, basketball, volleyball. But the ones that I really focused on in the team element was soccer throughout my life, basketball, baseball, and then ultimately... surprise, surprise, I was a javelin thrower, which I carried through high school and then also walked on to the track team at Harvard.
You don't often hear that, so it's so interesting. Okay, so now you're boarding school, you're voted in as the first woman student body president. Are you thinking this is setting you up for a political path? Because you easily could have gone naturally law, or I hear you debate about the markets on a regular basis. So what were you thinking kind of career-wise? And maybe if you're anything like me, I wasn't even thinking career-wise when I was in high school. So maybe it emerged, maybe something sparked in college, but where did you initially see your path?
My initial path, which predated high school, was that of becoming a doctor.
A doctor?
It seemed obvious.
Did you have doctors in your family?
No doctors in the family, but I knew I loved science. I knew I wanted to help people. I've always been an observer of people. I've always liked to help people. We were always at the doctor, right? Kids are always sick. So you see your pediatrician, your dentist. And I thought this makes natural sense, a lucrative path, I suppose. So my parents certainly supported it. And so that's where I naturally thought I was heading. But nonetheless, life is not linear. Now, for me, it was college, Ec 10. Ec 10 was the class, freshman year. This is an iconic class, Marty Feldman. I was so excited.
Was it macro or micro?
This was macro. This is like big picture.
Big picture.
And I was so excited to pick my classes that I was going through everyone. I was like, Ec 10, that sounds interesting. I'm going to do that. And my parents said, oh, so you're going to hate it. It's going to be boring. And I said, well, I'm going to try it. And I loved it.
What did you love about it?
Loved it. I loved the macro themes, and you have all of these principles underlying what's driving markets, but they change. They change. So it gets back to that earlier comment on always learning, always evolving, always changing. You could really satisfy that. You put structure and rules around how you expect the market's going to behave. And then you can consistently see some of these macro forces shifting that then lend to a differing path ahead. So it's always really interesting. And then on the micro side, that's where you could really focus on the mathematical, analytical side of things of, I see supply is here, I see demand is here, this structure is worth X, Y, or Z, and put prices to things. So it married a lot of my interests as well as creating that avenue for debate and discussion.
When you were in school, did you initially think, though, because econ can take you on myriad paths, right? So financial services, while it's obvious, it's not the only career trajectory.
That's right.
So were you thinking at all about investing in financial services while you were in school?
I was thinking a bit about it.
Okay.
But quite candidly, I was also really focused on sports.
Yeah.
And being a javelin thrower. So while I look back and I think to myself, probably should have spent a little bit more time doing internships as opposed to spending my summers training for Javelin. And that would have maybe given me a little...
Why? Fast forward now 20 years that you'd be in any different position?
Of course not.
Of course not.
Of course not. Because again, life is not linear, and it's all of these micro decisions that lead to where we are today and give us the skills and the confidence to know that we're in the seat that we're supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And I think for me as well, I was interested in law as well. I was just interested in all of the available options.
You're a lifelong learner. That's what I'm hearing. Kind of consummate student.
I still ended up at a law firm for 2 years.
You did?
After college.
Doing what?
I was a paralegal, but what they called an academic paralegal. So it left the door open to spending a lot of really quality time with really impressive attorneys that were focused on employment law, environmental law, a really well-respected firm here in the city. I still stay connected with some of those attorneys. And it was, again, a pathway towards, I think, understanding several things that are important for leading a business, the employment law side of it, and how you think about your talent and talent development and ensuring good paths forward. And then on the environmental side, it actually was a precursor to being an investor in the municipal market because we were working with similar organizations.
So Alex, tell us, was there a particular moment or maybe a person or an experience that sparked your interest in investing?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was Mandel Crawley. He is head of talent management at Morgan Stanley, tremendous leader, tremendous mentor and sponsor of me over the years. But when I had my initial introduction to him, when I was navigating into investing, it was clear that this was a pathway for me and that I should join him for a super day. And so I drove up to Purchase, New York and had my first super day, which was intense but exciting. And I just recall stepping on that trade floor and feeling the buzz, the enthusiasm, the excitement. So it was really a series of moments throughout that day that solidified, I really want this. And I hope to be on this trade floor learning and growing. And it was that dynamic that you also saw of traders sitting next to salespeople and young talent learning from seasoned talent, where it was exactly the type of environment that I was seeking.
The super day, you're walking through the trading floor, right? Were there other women? Did you see people that looked like you, or was that not even kind of in scope for you?
Now, there were women on the trade floor. Absolutely. There were women in sales roles, trading roles, fewer in leadership roles. There were fewer women then than there are today. 100%. I did not think it was a hindrance at any point early in my career because I was fortunate, likely because I was performing. So certainly earned it, but to have sponsors and mentors who very early on keyed in and focused on ensuring that I had a path towards growth, regardless of gender or any other key consideration.
Yeah. Okay. So now fixed income markets versus equity markets. How did you end up going down fixed income route and you've remained there today? So what is it about those markets?
For me, landing in munis was surprising. At the time, you may not recall this, I'm acutely aware, but when I started in the market, the municipal market was largely homogenized. It was mostly AAA insured, 60% plus of the market. And it didn't seem like you could really identify a lot of relative value opportunities.
Right.
So when you were on the floor at the time, it's like, well, I want to be in credit. Credit's exciting and there
spreads
and you're really looking at company balance sheets as opposed to the insurers.
Right.
But that said, I had some leaders at the time that said, you're doing fantastic and we want you to take on this new responsibility. We want you to step in and work exclusively with private wealth advisors at Morgan Stanley focused on the municipal market. And I said, that's insane. No way. I recall saying directly, I'm too green. I'm too green. And they said, well, that's wonderful, but we strongly encourage you do it. I asked, well, I need to know who's the rest of the team that's going to be doing this. And they said, well, you, but with tremendous support and oversight from others, senior seasoned members on the municipal team who have sat in both sales and trading. And at that point, I just trusted. These were people
they're
I
not going to set you up to fail. They want you to succeed.
And that they also knew what was best for me. They're both going to set me up to succeed, but they had a better understanding of this next step is a really good career move for you. So trust us. We will support you. Take the leap. It's a calculated risk. Do it. And I did it. I said, I'll give you a year. And at the end of the year, I want some optionality around this. Now, fast forward, I spent a year developing deep relationships with private wealth advisors at Morgan Stanley.
And had you ever previously had any exposure to private wealth advisors?
Not to private wealth, to broader financial advisors at Morgan Stanley, yes, but private wealth, no. So it was a very good learning experience, and I had a real opportunity to work with some of the best at the firm, which it taught me a lot. What I recall was saying, I will do this for a year and then let's see. And at the end of the year, I said, I'm not ready to make a shift. I developed deep relationships, started at that point to think less about the role as sell-side brokerage focused, but more portfolio management. Get to know the advisors, get to know their clients, get to know their business. What keeps them up? Is it interest rate risk? Is it credit risk? How can we improve portfolios on your behalf in partnership? And at the end of the year, I loved it. And I wanted to continue that pathway forward because the relationships and the process was so very important.
Right.
And then fast forward a bit further, and through that process, the great financial crisis happened. And in that moment, my partnership with these clients and advisors became critical because you learned that you didn't necessarily know what you owned. And someone had to sit there, I recall working on the trade floor late into the hours, just combing through OSs to understand, what do we own in these variable rate securities? What is the underlying credit quality? And that's really, if I'm being honest about being an investor, that's when the learning really occurred. When the crisis hit and you had to navigate very volatile, uncertain times, that's where you learn a lot.
It so strikes me because if we go back to the beginning of the conversation where initially you thought you would go to med school and become a doctor, and what was important to you then was helping patients with their physical health. But what ended up happening was you're now helping clients with their financial health.
Yes.
So it's really interesting that, at the end of the day, it really was about seemingly in helping people. That seems to be what your passion is. It's just manifested a bit differently than maybe your 10-year-old self thought.
That's right. It's, my North Star is absolutely that, doing what is best for people, whether that is, service through student council, whether that's captaining a sporting team, whether that is investing client assets or managing, talent.
You made a big shift career-wise, going from previously from large institutions coming to Rockefeller Capital Management, and of course the role being overseeing our all-important fixed income business within Rockefeller Asset Management. Talk us through that decision-making process. What felt right to you about making that move? And then walk us through the period now where you are today and where the business is.
Sure. The thing that felt most right was the people, the leadership, the organization, the opportunity to build again. If I look back through my career and the series of roles that I've had and opportunities at all of these various firms, it was very much building within private wealth and what the leadership team was trying to achieve, rebuild how we approach engaging with private wealth within the municipal business. And then I made a leap from the sell side to the buy side to learn and grow and try to bring assets externally within the muni space. And then I made a leap to rebuild a municipal business that had some kinks along the way. And it was always that excitement and enthusiasm around building and that entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with these organizations where I truly had wonderful managers and mentors, which were always critically important. Now, throughout your career, as you start to build and grow more challenging things, I think you appreciate more just how impactful leadership can be in providing that support that we've talked about so many times. So for me, my first discussion with Casey Clark, our CIO, and his enthusiasm, his excitement, and that genuine tone that he is a partner in the process towards growth. And then all of the following conversations that I had with the leadership team were exactly that. It's been phenomenal growing our business, partnering with advisors, partnering with clients and prospects to make sense of markets through particularly volatile and uncertain times, and also seek to ensure that we are delivering on that key task, protecting client assets and delivering compelling total return through creating portfolios that can be stable and resilient through a range of outcomes that we see today. And, it's the sky's the limit.
Indeed it is. So as someone devoted to maximizing alpha for clients, and you're overseeing $5 billion on behalf of clients, and you are always focused on maximizing alpha, what's your earliest memory of money? And what's the most important financial advice you've ever received?
One of my earliest memories of money was treasury bonds. My grandmother used to buy me, and I know you mentioned you also used to receive, she would buy me a treasury every birthday. And I found the concept of accretion so fascinating, that this piece of paper that was worth very little today would be worth so much at a later date. And those would sit in a safety deposit box at the bank, just waiting for that day where it had some type of future value. And that probably, should have been a signal at the time that fixed income.
You were going to go into fixed income, exactly.
Was the spot for me, but at that age, I didn't quite connect the dots. Now, in terms of some of the most important financial advice I've received, and maybe the treasury accretion speaks to this, the value of saving early and often and the value of compounding. My father was wonderful about trying to impart this to my brother and I through just, innocuous forwarding a note from, MSN, like financial news. And when we were 17, just saying, fund your 401k. And it's really powerful. You really start to see that over time. I think the other really important financial advice is be aware of behavioral finance. Be really mindful of the pitfalls that sometimes get in our way of making the best investment decision, whether that's about timing for asset allocation, staying in markets, adding to markets, or how you think about some of the relevant risks. And then lastly, I'll add, be humble. Be inquisitive, be mindful of the things that we do know, but some of the biases, conscious or unconscious, that might drive us as investors to make decisions that are not fully informed.
Okay, so something you've talked a lot about has been the importance of networks for you. Then I try to marry that with you're running a fixed income team, you're running a $5 billion business, it's on a huge growth trajectory, you are supporting a growing business in the Rockefeller Global Family Office and private advisor teams. You alluded to your husband, you're married, you have 3 children. You have seemingly tried to have a personal life as well, your constant pursuit of learning. How do you manage all of that? I go back to the original ask is I'm thinking myself, like, wow, how have you been able to maintain these support systems and the networks, thinking about everything you are juggling between your professional and your personal life?
Discipline helps.
Discipline.
And you mentioned juggling, and I think it is very much juggling. And I like to think of, on both the personal and the business side, I like to think that we have balls in the air at every point in time. And some of us have many, and some of them are plastic, and some of them are glass. And that can change at different points in time.
I love that. I've never heard that before.
I've shared it with many people in similar situations with multiple kids. And
so the plastics could conceivably drop.
And so know which they are.
Yep.
Know that they change. And know when you can drop some of the plastic balls.
Yeah.
And that will help give you some perspective of, as I'm trying to balance all of these different things, and we all agree balance isn't really a thing, but it is navigating through trying to deliver on the business and the growth, as well as ensuring that you can have a personal life and that you're there to support your kids and that you have a partnership with your husband or your parents or your friends that have become family. And so it's knowing which to drop when needed, I think, is critically important. And then taking that space to take a step back and say, I need a break.
I love that. I can't believe I've never heard that, because what do you prioritize? And so I think that's such a good guiding principle, just imagery to constantly think about. Let's go to, and perhaps it's going to be Friday on the plane, but talk to me about your happy place.
I do have many happy places. So let's start there. You know, that moment when I walk in the door and you see the kids and they give you a hug and they're excited at the end of the day and want to tell you everything. Like, that is one of my happiest places. Mornings, you know, very similar. But if I were to think of a happy place where maybe I'm alone, that is getting downstairs before the world is awake, before my children are awake or my partner's awake, with a book, with a cup of coffee on a beautiful animal print settee, just staring out the window and really taking in the news or a good book. In terms
what
of,
are you reading when that happens? It's not always work-related, is it?
Oftentimes it is work-related. Some of my, recent kind of guilty pleasure reads were lessons in chemistry. That was a really fun one that I absolutely loved. I have tightened up on next after hearing from many yesterday that should be my next read. But a lot of it's, Bloomberg and Barron's and the Wall Street Journal.
But it just speaks to how passionate you are about what you do. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, Alex, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences. And many thanks to our listeners for tuning in for this great conversation.
Wonderful. Laura, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Genius Loves Company. To learn more about Rockefeller Capital Management, visit rockco.com or keep up with us on LinkedIn or Instagram. This material was prepared by Rockefeller Capital Management. The views expressed of the hosts and guests in this episode are as of a particular point in time and are subject to change without notice. The views expressed by the speakers are solely their own and may differ from or conflict with those of other divisions in Rockefeller Capital Management. This information was provided for illustrative and educational purposes only. It should not be construed as an investment recommendation, investment advice, an offer of Rockefeller investment advisory or brokerage services, or a projection or illustration of the performance of any particular investment or strategy offered by Rockefeller. Forward-looking statements, including those presented herein, are inherently uncertain, as future events may differ materially from those reflected, and past performance is not a guarantee of future performance.